everyone. Thanks for making it today. We are going to be talking about spec-driven development with Kiro. This is going to be we're going to be doing a code talk here today, so I have my laptop set up. We're going to look at some code, but we're going to first go through some slides, and I'll explain what we're up to. First, let's have a little bit of an introduction. My name is Eric Kanchit. I'm a senior developer advocate at AWS, and today I have with me Nikhil.
Hey folks, I'm Nikhil. I lead the product team for Kiro. Thank you all for coming here. This is after lunch. We're going to have a fun session. Hope you won't need your coffee. Make it fun.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with a few things. We're going to look at the history of Kiro. So Nikhil is going to jump directly into that in a moment. We're going to talk about a little bit of spec-driven development, the name of this talk, and why I think everyone here should be using it with their agentic IDEs today. And we're going to specifically look at Kiro and how that works with it. We're going to touch on MCP. Does anybody here use MCP servers right now? Okay, I see a handful. Let me ask you, who's using Kiro right now? Okay, only a few. So hopefully by the end of this hour talk that I have convinced you all to try out Kiro and spec-driven development.
And just another follow-up, who's used Kiro so far? Okay, a few more people.
Okay.
Good to know.
Good to know. And then this is a code talk, so I see everyone has their laptops out, or most people. I'm going to jump on this laptop here. We're going to do a little bit of pair programming. So we're going to try to create an app. We're going to talk about it more in a moment, a job seekers app. We're going to use the spec-driven development flow inside Kiro, and we're going to see how well it does. And then we're going to talk about some of the features of how it works all together. And then I want to give everyone here time to ask us questions at the end. So maybe 10, 15 minutes for that. So from the hands that came up earlier, it sounds like a lot of you have not used much of Kiro. So let me explain it before we get too much farther. It's a new agentic IDE that we released in the last few months. It actually just went GA or general available a few weeks ago, and we're really proud of it. It's really based on this idea of spec-driven development. Now you can do vibe coding, but we really feel like spec-driven development is what sets it apart from some of its competitors that maybe some of you have heard of. When we released it, it was a total surprise to us. It really went viral. It got hundreds of thousands of downloads. We had to put up a wait list. And then people found a way around the wait list, so we had to put even bigger barriers up. But we've been really happy with reception. We've gotten so much feedback on it, and we've been making it even more better as it's been going on, as this time frame in the last few months. So I'm going to kick it off to Nikhil to talk about the history of Kiro.
Cool. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about this, but I want to jump to the coding session fast. So the evolution of building software. Let's actually take a step back and talk about the overall editor space, right? IDEs got really popular because they provided a single tool chain where you could do things like have an integrated compiler, view linting issues, find, debug, set breakpoints, and it offered a lot of benefits over traditional text edit-like code interfaces. And so that was kind of the first wave that got wide adoption. And then in the last, I'd say 2 years, we've had really like AI editors become a big thing. It first started with code completions. So like you'd be in a file, you type like a hash or you type 2 slashes and you'd be like, do this, and then it would generate like a function for you. And then that quickly evolved to the more agentic or like, I call it like the ChatGPT-like experience, where you input natural language and the agent's able to edit multiple files. The fundamental shift that's happened, and we see this with all our customers who've been using Kiro and Q Developer in the past, was that unlike previously where the developer drives and provides, I think with AI editors, the developer steers the AI agent to author and review code. The developer is still very much in the in the driver's seat, but it's a different workflow where you can actually use AI to kind of accelerate your workflow, but you're still responsible for the code. That's the important bit. Vibe coding, this term got really popular in the last year and a half, where it essentially covers this workflow where it goes, developer writes a prompt, AI generates code, you write another prompt, and then you keep going in this loop and cycle. And this has worked really well for a lot of people to be able to prototype things that would otherwise take weeks to set up. But it's also got its challenges. Slack threads, for example, I use Slack threads as a good analogy. So if you have a Slack conversation, we've all been in Slack conversations where like the message thread goes to like 100 messages, and you leave that thread with like, okay, what did we take away? Why are we making the decisions we're making? And sometimes that's just lost in that context. And that's one of the challenges you have with vibe coding, is that it kind of completely skips the traditional SDLC lifecycle, right? Historically, when we build features, we've always started with artifacts, right? We talk about requirements, we write design docs, we talk about trade-offs, and we meet, and then we start. Whether it's waterfall or agile, you're doing that both at different scales. So what we did is we really talked to a lot of our power users internally in the company and externally, and we saw that they'd already made this organic shift to planning before they actually went about creating or generating code. And planning upfront really helped the models focus and produce better output. So what we did is we built a first-party workflow for planning called Spec-driven development. And normally this time I demo it, but we're going to spend so much time talking about it that I'll just move ahead and get to that quickly. But really, Spec-driven development, what it introduces a workflow for going from your initial requirements to an output. It's a really structured workflow where you start with requirements. Once your requirements are done, there's a design. So you actually look at your design file, and then you get to a task list, and then you implement that task list. And you can go back and forth in this loop till you end up with an output you're happy with. And once your code is generated, another big problem in this space, the term AI slop has become quite common now, is where the AI generates a lot of code, and once you generate code, there are no processes to actually, a lot of tools don't actually have processes to review things. So we have hooks built in, and what hooks allow you to do is we have a whole bunch of lifecycle events in the IDE, such as file save, file create, and we're adding a bunch more in the next few weeks that actually allow you to validate changes. So an example of a hook that we use in our docs repo is effectively like a C-spell checker, but it also checks for tone and style, right? So our workflow when we're writing docs for new features is that we take our initial requirements doc, we feed that into Kiro, and it structures our docs. But then we have hooks that help actually say, hey, it's almost like a separate thread to think about the work that was created that help us set up rules. Another good example is if you're building UI components, you can have things like, you have a React component, you want it to follow a single responsibility principle, right? So it's a single focused. You can use a hook for that. And rather than me keep talking about this, why don't we actually just go ahead and build something together? And we're going to pair program, though there's only one chair, so I'm going to peer over Eric while he's programming.
Sounds good. All right, let's get this set up. Log in. 1 second. Okay, so we want to create an app with you guys today. So before we started, me and Nikhil came up with this Figma. So do you want to explain a little bit about what it is?
Yeah. So just FYI, after this demo, we're both quitting our jobs, and this is going to be our new business because we really like the idea. But the core of it is a job seekers app. So problem. Here's the elevator pitch. So problem, people looking for jobs outside of just prepping for interviews, there's a lot more than just goes into like, do you know the answer? It's like, what's your style? What's your tone? And how do you actually prep? People use software tools out there, but like you can't actually talk to another person, and there's no experience where you get feedback on how you're doing on your interviews. So that's the core of the idea, and you can imagine we can build a lot of things around it. So the way Eric and I started this is we just hopped on a quick call, and we whiteboarded a flow where we said, okay, a user logs in, they set up a profile, and once they set up a profile, they can actually start interview prep. And a very simple MVP flow would be, okay, you start my interview prep, and you go in this question answer flow. So you're asked a question, you can record your response, and that goes back and forth. And at the end, we deliver an overview, a qualitative overview of how you did with a quantitative score.
Excellent. So we have this picture, this Figma that we created, and here's Kiro. Just for those of you who have never used it, let me give you a quick tour. I have a brand new Vite app that I just started this morning that we can start off with. It's basically Hello World. So we're just going to keep it to the front end for now, but you can imagine some of you DevOps and back-end engineers, you can imagine we might have a back-end component to this too. I just wanted to start with this. Also has Tailwind CSS installed for our design and graphics. Now on this side here, we have this little ghost. I haven't really talked about this. This is our Kiro ghost. It's our mascot. If you have been around the Venetian, we have the Kiro house. Anybody seen the Kiro house? That looks like a haunted house. I would recommend everyone to go through it. It's actually pretty fun. And then at the end of it, there's actually a code to get 1,000 free credits, 500 or 1,000. So check that out. You can go through it at any time. So this ghost here brings up a menu on our left-hand side: agent hooks, agent steering, specs, and MCP. So hooks, we kind of explained it already. It's a way you can essentially have things work in the background that are triggered on certain events. So imagine that you save a file, delete a file, you can have things happen. One common scenario is you might update documentation on every file save. Or you might do some localization, and we actually even have pre-built ones you can kind of take over without having to write anything yourself. And you can also have it specify certain file types. We're adding, as Nikhil said, more flexibility with this agent hooks in the future, but I just want to give it a shout out. We've also seen very creative people from the community do this in all sorts of ways for their Git workflows, for testing, all sorts of things. Agent steering is more like a rules file that you can put in. Maybe you have certain coding standards or design standards that you want to include. You can put it in steering files. I can also just have it automatically generate the steering files for me. And so what this does is it looks inside this folder inside my application, and then it creates a few files. You can see here it's already created the product and the tech file. And these are just based on what's in the app right now. So if you have an existing application and you want to kind of play with Kiro today, you can put this in there and have it generate the steering files, and then that'll get added to the context every time you start talking to the IDE.
Maybe you can show what that looks like, what those files look like.
Yes, that's a good idea. So here is what the product is. It's not that much because we really haven't added anything. Yeah, but it's a Vue 3 web application with TypeScript and Vite. I use a script setup. I don't know if anybody's a Vue.js fan, but that's essentially how they're created, the components. Type safe. We have the structure. Right now it's just kind of the hello world out of the box structure, but it's nice it's in here. And then here's some tech, which I just scroll down. But yeah, the frameworks, TypeScript, Vite, everything you would expect in there. And you can keep this, right now, this is just a moment in time snapshot of your current application. However, you can be creative with those hooks, and maybe you have it continuously update those documents, and those can be shared with your product teams or whoever else. And of course, I saw some hands earlier, MCP. I'm a huge MCP fan. It's even getting even better. I've seen some stuff coming out recently. But this is where you would set your MCP servers. In this case, I have Contact 7. I have AWS loves MCP servers. If you don't know, we keep continuously adding more for different services and different products. Kind of the catch-all one is the docs one. I'd recommend to try that one out. But if you have a specific use case, you can install like the MCP server for Bedrock Agent Core is one of them. And it's just a few lines. We, in fact, just recently added a way to add MCP servers with one click. So if you go to our Kiro.dev, I'll show that in a little bit. There might be a little button there. You click on it, it'll just automatically install it inside Kiro. And then we are diligently going to many of your favorite open source MCP GitHub repositories and updating it to add the little one-click install. That is still working. I'm still working on that. And then, of course, I have Brave Search, Bedrock Agent Core. So that's kind of a little bit of some of the features of Kiro. But I know the name of this talk is Spec-driven development, so let's dive into that. So once again, on the right-hand side, I have two boxes here. I have Vibe, which I just love to Vibe. It does a really good job at doing that, or Spec. Agents, right now we support Claude, Sonnet 4.5, 4.5, Opus, Haiku. So we kind of recommend just to start off with Auto, because we pick behind the scenes the best model that you should be using. I'll just leave it at Auto. We're adding more and more all the time. It's definitely in the back of our heads of adding more models for those of you who are fans of other ones. Sit tight. So, but let's try Spec. We actually had let's go ahead and start it, and then I'll give you a little story I had the other day. So here is the diagram that me and Nikhil came up with. I'm just going to make a snippet of it, a screenshot. And I'm just going to paste it here. And let's give it a prompt. So I'm going to choose Spec here. And I'm going to say, please use this picture and create a job seekers app. Use the picture as the design. I don't know, I always like to be explicit, and I like to be polite to AI too, so you'll see me using please and thank yous. I would do that too. Okay, so now it's going in and it's taking a look at those steering docs that we just created, and it's going to create this job interview preparation flow. And it's starting off with the requirements document. And I'm going to have Nikhil really walk me through on what his idea is and how properly you could look through a requirements doc.
Cool, awesome. Let me actually switch to the preview view of that requirements doc.
Okay, sure.
If you don't mind. Here, I'll do it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So as you can see, we took Kiro to.
We're going to switch. We're going to do a little.
We're going to play a little musical chairs. Mm-hmm. So as you can see here, Kiro took the initial screenshot that we had and actually unpacked that into a format. And I just realized Eric has an opposite scroll from me, so it's like really, this throws me off when I'm trying to scroll. But it unpacked our initial prompt to a set of requirements. And the way we define requirements is we define them as a user story, and every user story has acceptance criteria. Now, this is actually something we were doing in-house, in Amazon, in our teams, the way we worked. So we took the same workflow that we had on our team, and we made it available broadly. And the benefit of user story is like the human readable way that if we want to say, hey, what feature do you want to support? So this one's about logging in so that I can access my application, profile management, whereas the acceptance criteria are the actual details. So if you were to sit and say, okay, let's go and build this profile management feature, what are the nitty-gritty details that I need to actually think about? So the first pass I typically do is when I'm building something with Kiro is that I will look at the user stories and see if they're the user stories that I actually want to build. And I'll start there before I get into the acceptance criteria. So if we start at, first one's about logging in, the second one's about profile management, the third one's about an interview prep session, and this is about viewing and responding to answers, and like this is very important. Okay, this is about navigating through multiple questions. This is about the analysis and the result. This is about trend analysis. Requirement 7. Requirement 8 is my least favorite requirement because it's really nothing. Like, what do you mean I have a clean and intuitive interface? So what I'm going to do is actually like simplify this because I was just thinking through this. I think that demoing auth here is not that important. So I'm just going to say, please remove requirements 1, 2, we want 3, we want 4, we want 5, we want 6. I don't think we necessarily care about state persistence either right now. We just want to get something up and running. 7 and 8, as they are not needed for our MVP scope. Look, I use please as well. I never use please.
I'm telling you. Although some people do say it's just waste tokens, but I don't know. This is something I really think, even if you're not going to use Kiro after this talk, just being able to have your IDE or having your IDE, AI IDE, like go in and create these documents, but then also kind of going back and forth, because one-shotting this may not give you exactly what you expect at the end of the day. So it's almost like you kind of go back and forth through this whole process.
I think the way I've seen actually talking to some customers is that, you know, the initial whiteboard we did, right? Mm-hmm. Like as a developer, I might prefer to just vibe code that, right? Like just because then it forces me to think about my interfaces and things like that I'll need, and then enter something more structured. So that is also a workflow that we support. All right, so I think hopefully these requirements look good. I think for the interview questions, we should just limit to 3.
Yeah, so it should be just a quick, I imagine it, you go in, it asks you a question, and then you use your microphone, explain it, then it goes to the next question, and then it does an analysis at the end.
All right, I think this is good. So now that the requirements are done, we can go ahead and move to the design phase. So what's going to happen now is that it's going to take these requirements and generate a design doc based off your existing code base. And Eric and I will play musical chairs again.
And for those of you who are thinking, well, my PM does this, right? I don't have to write requirements. Trust me, maybe you take what they give you to put in here so you can then really create the feature or product that they're looking for. So yeah, now it's creating the design documents, kind of reading what we've done and the updates, the requirements to go to this next phase, the design. While it's working, I can also click here to kind of get an idea of the state of it. While it's working, one thing I was going to say with the spec and the vibe code, I played a game on stream the other day. I get to have so much fun. We actually had another person on, and we decided like which task would I use vibe coding versus spec mode, and it's actually harder than you would imagine to figure out which one which one you should use. I usually say if it's something that needs a little bit more forethought, it's a larger feature, then spec mode is good. And I love just having this documentation afterwards I can look at. For those of you eagle-eyed on the screen right there, it says, by the way, can everybody see this screen? Do I need to make the font bigger in the back? Can you see it? Okay, I see thumbs up. Okay. So what it did now is actually, it created something called property tests. I want to go ahead.
Why don't we start with just the architecture, right? Like just work down to see if it's the actual system we want, and then I think let's get to properties. And
yes, that's a good point. I'm so excited. I want to jump into property testing, but we'll wait on that. So here is the design document that it created. It also gave me a nice summary of what it did, and I can move on from there. And it's asking me, hey, does this look good? We can move to the next phase. But I can look here and kind of take a look at the high-level architecture. We have view. Nice little ASCII art here. But we do use mermaid diagrams, if those of you are familiar with that. It works really great in Markdown. So a start screen, question, results. Okay, I'm assuming this looks good. I mean, just it does look good. Local storage to share everything. Web audio API. That'll really help us when we record the audio from us when we're answering these questions. This is kind of how at Amazon, we are an AWS. We're a very document-driven culture. I've been in many design doc reviews, and we actually write our design documents very similar to this. We have interfaces that we outline. If you ever want to see how the sausage is made when you want to see how some of our services are designed, kind of take a look at these design documents. So I have question, response, the component start screen view.
So just under response, can you just scroll up for a second? What is session state capture right now? Questions, responses. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. Oh, and then we have question screen.view. So these are all our components that it's going to create. Our score, some prompts, question bank. It's going to be just a hard-coded file for now.
So is this the actual file, or is it just going to generate its own questions?
It looks like it's a static array in the application for the MVP. We'll use a predefined set of common interview questions. So I'm assuming this is
just the structure.
Yeah, the structure of it. But it could be very similar to these or these. Here's our stored session. And then the last part we'll come back to, but that's the correctness properties. One thing I noticed out of here that's missing is it doesn't really have any information about how, if we're recording audio from our laptops, how is it going to take that audio and transcribe it? So I want to add that feature into it.
Yeah, and I think there's one more thing missing too. So once you transcribe it, how is it actually, like, how are you going to get the results? Was that captured?
Yeah, that's a good point. So results, we have a session, we have a response.
Guessing we're going to use AI for the result generation.
Yeah, we have a results screen with a score number, but it's not really, this isn't really showing exactly what we want, right? We want a little bit more information. Sometimes I just do a quick search too if I can't find it. Yeah, test complete results. All right, so what I assume we probably want to add in here is a way for AI to go in and do some analysis. So let's add these two things. We'll say, please transcribe the text as the user speaks it. Also, let's add additional analysis. That's a nice thing about this. I don't have to type right. Additional analysis.
That's actually my favorite feature about AI, that I never have to, if I make a typo, I never go back and fix it.
Exactly. With the results, we could use our favorite Amazon Bedrock, but let's use Claude
SDK.
Claude's AI SDK. All right, so now it's going to kind of understand what we want and make some updates to our design. And it's actually even going back to our requirements and making some additional changes there. So it's smart enough to know, hey, I know you're updating the design, but the requirements aren't quite what you mentioned. Now let's go and update the requirements as well. So now we have a microphone button that you can click on, and now it will transcribe it, and it will keep going from there. There's also, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but we do have an idea of checkpointing. So if you're going through this process and you're like, oh my goodness, it's way off what I expected, you could just click this checkpoint button, or in this case, the restore button, and it would restore back to its previous state. So this means that you can easily go back and forth instead of having to rely on your version control system and revert the changes and go back. So it also kind of makes little changes. It might find an error. It kind of goes back and forth and updates it. So now it's updating the design document based on our suggestions. And we can see what it's doing. Yeah, so now here we have the transcribed text in our interface, as we expect it would be there, and some better analysis. It's also adding in.
So what's the analysis? Analysis result. Okay, got it. So that's what will capture the results. There wasn't really a results interface before, was there?
No. Perfect. I love how happy the agentic IDEs are. Oh, perfect. I've updated the design document. So we can now take another look at it. And we could say, okay, now
Did you add the transcription service to the system diagram too?
Well, let's see. So we have start screen, question, result, recording component, local storage, web audio, IDE. Oh, it says speech to text.
And it added the Claude AI too.
Perfect. Perfect. All
Honestly, when this system diagram looks good, I'm like, yeah, looks good to me. Let's move forward.
LGTM. All right, let's move to the next part. So now we have taken this idea that we had, we updated the requirements, went into the design, and now we are going to the last phase, which is the task. Well, I guess it's more like the second to last, because once we have a list of tasks, we need to implement those tasks, and there's ways we can do that as well.
And this workflow is, there's actually a lot of feedback we've gotten on this workflow on improvements we can make. But in general, it's pretty flexible because it's all built in Markdown. So you see there's like this refine button on the top. So what we also have a flow is if you go and like make a manual edit, you can refine that. Clicking refine will basically take that edit and kind of integrate it into the rest of the design doc. So if you do that in the requirements, it'll generate like the user story and acceptance criteria in years format, which we'll talk about. And you can same thing on the design. And actually even same thing on task list. So like, let's say you've done 3 or 4 tasks and you're like, hey, I actually want to change something, because often this is in real life, right? We implement 4 tasks and we're like, hey, actually like now I want to change something because this is not what I want to do. You can go and make changes out of band, and clicking the update tasks will refresh. So Kiro will look at your code base and actually see what's done and update the upcoming tasks as well.
So now it's at a part where we have this task list of all these tasks, and we also have an option to keep the optional tasks or make them all required. And here are these property-based testing, which are all optional right now. What do you think, Nikhil? Should we just keep all optional tasks for faster?
Yeah, let's just keep our optional tasks. This was actually a flow a lot of people asked us when we didn't have this flow when we first launched. But what was happening was that for every feature, you had a lot of unit tests, and people sometimes wanted to see the end product before they get to the tests, but they wanted the tests. So we introduced this flow to keep tasks keep tasks spelled out, but set to optional by default.
Okay, so
should we take a look at the task list? So we can do the same thing here. We can refine this task list as well now. So can we see, like, keep scrolling down. So you've got create the data models, implement audio recording service,
implement response validation storage, the AI integration. One thing you may be thinking about, hey, I have this list of tasks, but I want to get to something like right away that I could test. So another idea too is we could refine this list and reorder it.
Yeah, let's ask. I think so. I think let's ask Kiro to, like, I'd say prioritize getting an MVP. How should we frame this? Prioritize getting an MVP scope together by task 5, right? So we have something to see. There's like a product analogy here where, like, when you're building a car, you first start with a skateboard and move to a bike and then build a car. Or you can choose to build the wheels, you can build the engine, and then stitch together everything at the end. The better way to build a product is you build interim steps. So you always have something that's workable.
Right. Yeah, so this is very flexible. We can kind of move these tasks around. I kind of like that idea of getting to the first 5 tasks that has an MVP we can show you, especially in this short time we have together today. So I think that would work well. I also sometimes just have it condense tasks down. Like if I see it has like 25 tasks, I'll be like, whoa, why do we have 25 tasks? Can you make it into like 10 tasks? And then it'll kind of group some more together. Or some people, who does test first development? Who writes their tests first? Not, okay, all right, a couple of people over here.
No one likes tests.
So maybe that's the workflow that you like. Then you can set this up, write all the tests first. Let's do test first driven development. All right, so we have, I think, for this, a core MVP with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tasks. Even has task 2, or phase 2. So let's see.
Is there UI state captured in the first 5?
Set up dependencies, create core data types, implement application state management, implement audio recording, speech test, implement response validation storage. Create start screen component. Oh, so it looks like the first phase may not even have the UI.
Should we ask it to have some UI?
Yeah, adds UI to the initial phase.
So we can actually visually test it.
So we can visually
play with it. Yeah.
Test it. Good call out. That's the nice.
We did a run through of this. Like it's interesting because we've done like now 3 run throughs of this, and every time it's a little different. Like every time, like last time we did it got this in the first run, so it's super interesting.
Yes, that's why you always read it. We have to all, when we're using coding agents and agentic IDEs, you have to read it and pay attention to what it's doing, because otherwise it will do things that we don't expect. All right, so it looks like it reordered it again. Now it's task 1 through 10 now, until it gets into phase 2. I think for the sake of time, because we only have about 20 minutes together, let's see if we can start implementing some of these tasks. And I do have an after. So if it doesn't get through all of them, we'll still show you what it comes up with afterwards. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
So we'll start task here. And you can see we can start a task a couple different ways. We can just click in the UI, or we can talk to it in the chat. So I'm going to start task. How about we do 5?
Yeah.
And we'll do 6, because that has the start screen component.
Yeah.
And right now, what it's doing, it's going to go into the terminal. It's going to run some commands. Now, typically, you can see here we have a whole task list. They're queued. So it's going to do task 1, and then it's going to do the rest of the tasks afterwards. These actually need to be done in order. That's why it does it this way. You can also just take a look at it. It's now starting to do it. This one was pretty easy. Just had to make a few files and install a few NPM dependencies. And then I can kind of look at the next one and see it's starting task 2. And it's going through it pretty quick. This will probably take a little bit of time.
So while this is happening, why don't we pivot to talk about property testing?
Great.
Maybe switch to the design view.
Yes.
Cool. So I'll just give a little bit of an overview. So there's a reason why we went with, in the requirements, we went with this user story acceptance criteria format. And the acceptance criteria are structured in what's called years, which is easy approach to requirement syntax. I believe that's it. But what that means is that when you define something, it says, when you do this, the system shall do Y. And that allows us to create essentially logical equivalence and do things like formal reasoning on the actual requirements. So that's really what a property is. There's a definition of a property here. It's a characteristic or behavior that should hold true across all executions of a system. So what we do is we take the years format requirements, extract properties, and then from those properties, there's a framework called FastCheck that allows you to actually test those properties. And unlike unit testing that has limited inputs, the inputs that you provide to the system to test the output, with property testing, it actually fuzzes a whole bunch of values across a range. So it generates more evidence that when you have a requirement, the generated output maps to the requirement, right? So that we're thinking about this whole world of specs in a very first principles approach, right? Like how do you solve the problem in the AI world where the generated code actually matches the user's intent? And property-based tests are the first way we're going about it, but there's a lot more we have planned.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, everything you can do with it. I'll show you an example. I did this, I'm a chess fan. I vibe coded or spec coded, I guess you could say, a chess app. And for me and my son, and we wanted to make sure that it worked as it expected. So here is a list of property-based tests for this other application that we created. And you can even see if you hover over it, it tells you what the test was for. This really does test those requirements. FastCheck is, by the way, if you're using Python or a different language, there are other libraries that does this property-based testing. So I can even take a look at it. It says all property-based tests passed. For any board state in the AI generated move, the move must be validated against the movement registry. And so here's the test. And you can see, for those of you who are looking at imports from NPM, it's this FC from FastCheck. And we write our test. We do an assert on it. We have create board state. And then one thing that I find really interesting is this num runs at the end. So it's basically doing fuzzy testing. It's making it random changes to the test file, and it'll actually run over 100 times to make sure it is as you expected. And I will say adding these property-based testing makes the output of your code at a much higher quality and oftentimes less bugs. And you can see here, it just goes through a bunch of different tests to check to see if the move is valid. Where are we in our demo? So we have task 5. Looks like it's on task 6 now, which will take a moment.
So as the tasks get done, it also marks it off in the implementation plan. So if you take a look at this.
So here's our job seekers app we've been creating. You can see we have nice little check marks next to everything. And it's diligently working on task 6, which is this.
What happened right now is one of my favorite features we launched recently, like the diagnostics tool. So because we own the overall IDE interface, when there are problems, so if you go to the problems tab in your editor, it typically reports like your linting issues, and the agent is able to read it. So we used to have a lot of problems with specs, like you'd have 5 tasks generated and you open problems tab, you'd see there's 6 or 7 issues to fix. But ever since we've added this diagnostics tool, it's been really great.
So it completed step 6. I'm not sure if it wanted me to go to 10. We could keep it going. Let me see. I'm just doing npm run dev because I want to give everyone here time to ask us questions and to show our quick optimized demo at the end. So if I open up 5173, it looks like it didn't finish it. Still has a hello world. I think it probably didn't link the component.
Why don't you just go ahead and do the other ones, and you can, while it's happening, you can switch to the finished app so people have time to ask questions.
Yes. Okay. We're going to queue all these. You can see here, though.
Last time we did this, in 5 tasks, it was done. So
you can see it's starting to create the components that we want. Some use states. These are like hooks in React. Okay, let's take a look at our final app. I'm going to run dev on this. You see here, same principles as the app I'm showing you. We have our spec design requirement task. And so this is what it looks like. It's an interview prep practice. So we have behavioral questions, technical questions, and leadership questions. It's connected to a Claude Sonnet 3.7 model, I believe. So which one do you want to try?
Just pick one. Let's do technical.
Sure. I'm going to allow this time. So explain a complex technical concept from your field to someone. Hello, let me explain about websites. There's a server and there's a client, and our website has to interact. It can run locally. We can have single-page applications. We can have server-side rendered apps. I could keep going.
As you can see, we've gotten pretty low scores every time we played with this.
Probably not going to pass the interview with that, but for the sake of this demo, we'll keep going. It's actually one thing, it keeps the last answer from the last one we ran in here. It's just something we didn't change yet. Describe a challenging technical problem you solved recently. What was your approach? What was the outcome?
I'd say this app, right? We
Yes.
learned about the web APIs.
We learned to create a spec-driven development to create this application I'm using right now. I learned a little bit about Vite and React and property-based testing, and I got to do a demo in front of 100 people. Okay. How do you stay current with new technologies, industry trends? We should ask the audience this. I'm sure they have lots of interesting answers. I attend reInvent, amazing events, amazing talks. I also go and look at Builder Center that AWS uses to tell people about our latest tech. I go to conferences. I look at Stack Overflow. I go online to YouTube and watch a bunch of technical creators. Maybe I'll get a little higher score for that. So then I click Finish, Get Score, and now it's taking all this. It has a very simple system prompt that just does an analysis on it. And it should go and grab the information. It sometimes takes 30 to 60 seconds.
Nice. You got 4 out of 10 this time.
And of course, the candidates demonstrate some relevant technical knowledge, engagement in the industry, but the response lacks structure, clarity, and depth. So great interview prep that we could use, and literally just took us not so long to put it together. And it looks like it did actually complete this as well.
It'd be nice to see something a little more than Hello World after.
All right, well, let's give some time. Let me switch back to, do you guys want to see what it came up with after step 10, that we're not faking this?
I do.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is what it came up with. Start interview prep. Tell me about yourself and your background. Allow this time. Test, test, test. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. So it's duplicating it. Maybe we could go back and have it do something else. Greatest strengths. This is my greatest strengths. Test, test, test. Okay, you get the idea. One thing I didn't do is I didn't put my Anthropic Claude key in here, so it's definitely going to fail at the last step.
Oh yeah, you forgot about that. Okay.
Test, test, test. And I think right here, maybe it's not even using. That's amazing. That's all you need to do, guys. All right. Let's switch back
cool.
to PowerPoint.
Well, I mean, I think we have 12 minutes left. I think we got through the core workflow that we wanted to talk about. I think just one thing to keep in mind in Specs, like we launched this and like there was a lot of positive momentum and adoption around Specs, but this is just the start. As I said, we're solving like first principle problems. On the requirement side, often what we do is like we do things like scenario planning, right? Scenario planning is the wrong word, but like when we actually build something, we're like, hey, when the user does X and Y, what's the expected behavior, right? That doesn't really translate well into like the structured kind of doc we have here. But there's clarity on requirements as a concept. How do you know your task list matches, your task output matches your intent is another area we're just continuously going to invest in. And I'm actually super excited about this journey with Specs we're on, and I'm very excited to come back next year and talk about all the cool things we do with Specs over the year.
Me too. And also, just looking at it, it never implemented the Claude AI integration. The MVP didn't have that integration.
But you got a 7 on 10, so it's better off.
I know.
A Git repo?
Yeah, we'll put it up, sure.
We can put it up.
I don't have one right now, but we can certainly do that.
You can use the one-click Git integration on Kiro.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll have to try that.
Yeah, you click here, and you add them to your source changes. Oh, you're back on. Oh, you're no longer on the demo. Never mind. I was going to demo another feature. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?